The night she whispered, "No one is coming for me." The rain had already decided to stay. It fell in steady sheets against the bus stop's cracked plastic roof, blurring the streetlights into trembling halos. She sat curled on the cold metal bench, arms wrapped around herself, backpack pressed tight to her chest like it still held something worth protecting. Her name was Alina, and at 17, she had mastered the art of disappearing in plain sight. In school corridors, she walked with her head down. At home, she spoke only when spoken to. In the mirror, she avoided her own eyes. And now, at 11:43 p.m., with her phone battery at 2% and no missed calls, she finally said out loud what she had known for years. "No one is coming for me." The words didn't echo. They simply dissolved into the rain. 3 hours earlier, she had stood in the kitchen while her stepfather's voice tore through the air like shattered glass. The accusation didn't matter. It never did. It was always something. Too slow, too quiet, too ungrateful. Her mother stood near the sink, eyes lowered, hands trembling around a dish towel. Alina waited for the moment her mother would finally say, "That's enough." But the moment never came. It never had. When the shouting turned to the familiar crash of a plate against the wall, something inside Alina went still. Not angry, not afraid, just done. She walked to her room, packed 2 changes of clothes, her worn-out sneakers, and the photograph of her and her mother from before everything changed. Then she left through the back door. No one stopped her. No one noticed. At first, the night felt like freedom. The air was cool, and the city seemed vast and anonymous. She walked without direction, counting her steps, pretending she was the kind of girl who chose adventure. But as the hours passed, the streets emptied. Storefronts darkened. The laughter spilling from restaurants faded. And with each block, the truth pressed harder against her ribs. She had nowhere to go. Her best friend had moved away last year. The school counselor had once handed her a brochure and said, "If things ever get bad, call this number." She had folded it neatly and tucked it into a drawer she rarely opened. Pride? Fear? Maybe both. She didn't want to be the girl who needed saving. By the time she reached the bus stop, the rain had started. She sat down, the cold seeping through her jeans, and checked her phone. No messages. Not from her mother. Not from anyone. Social media glowed with other people's lives. Birthdays, study sessions, late-night selfies. She felt like she was watching the world through a window she couldn't open. When her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. But it was only a low battery warning. 2%. She stared at her reflection in the black screen, eyes swollen, hair plastered to her cheeks. "No one is coming for me," she whispered. She wasn't dramatic. She was realistic. People saved the loud, the brave, the visible. She had perfected invisibility. A car slowed near the curb, and she tensed, pulling her hood up. It drove on. A couple hurried past under a shared umbrella, laughing at something private and warm. The bus schedule taped to the pole was outdated. The last route had ended an hour ago. The rain intensified, drumming louder. Her phone died. The small rectangle of light vanished, and with it, the thin thread connecting her to the world she had just left. She pressed her forehead to her knees and let herself cry. Not the quiet tears she had learned to hide, but raw, shaking sobs that tore through her chest. She wasn't crying because she had left. She was crying because she had realized no one had tried to stop her. Footsteps approached. Slow, deliberate. She froze, wiping her face quickly, as if even strangers required a performance. A voice, gentle and steady, cut through the rain. "Are you okay?" She didn't look up. "I'm fine," she lied automatically. The voice didn't leave. Instead, it moved closer, but not too close. "It's almost midnight," it said, "and it's freezing." She forced herself to lift her head. The man standing a few feet away looked to be in his early 30s, soaked from the rain, holding a paper bag above his head like a useless shield. His eyes weren't sharp or suspicious. They were concerned in a way that felt unfamiliar. "I'm waiting for the bus," she said, though they both knew it wasn't true. He glanced at the schedule and offered a small, apologetic smile. That route stopped running at 10. Silence stretched between them, filled with rain and the hum of distant traffic. "Look," he said carefully, as if stepping across thin ice, "I don't want to scare you. My name's Daniel. I run the community center on Maple Street. We're open late on Fridays for teens who need a place." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. She studied him, searching for the hidden catch. I'm fine, she repeated, but the words felt weaker this time. He nodded, accepting the lie without challenging it. Okay, he said softly. But if you're not, I am. She frowned. What? The rain softened, as if leaning in. You said no one is coming for you, he replied. She hadn't realized she had spoken aloud again. Heat rushed to her face. He continued, I am. Not to fix everything. Not to force you. Just to make sure you're safe tonight. Something in his tone, no urgency, no demand, unraveled the tight knot in her chest. She had braced herself for indifference or danger. She hadn't prepared for simple presence. Why? She asked, her voice barely audible. Daniel shrugged slightly. Because once, a long time ago, someone showed up for me. I didn't think anyone would. I was wrong. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need a dramatic backstory to make his point. The rain slowed to a mist. She looked down at her soaked sneakers, at the backpack cutting into her shoulders. Pride battled exhaustion. Fear wrestled hope. It's just a few blocks, he added. You can walk behind me if that makes you more comfortable. If you decide to turn back, that's your choice. He stepped away from the bus stop, giving her space to choose. For a long moment, she remained seated. The bench felt colder than before. The city felt larger. No one is coming for me, she whispered again, but the sentence no longer sounded certain. She stood up. They walked in silence, a cautious distance between them. The community center was a modest brick building with warm light spilling from its windows. Inside, a few teenagers sat around a table playing cards. A woman at the front desk looked up and smiled, not with surprise, but with recognition, as if girls like Alina arrived every night, carrying invisible storms. Daniel handed her a towel and said, This is Alina. No interrogation. No paperwork thrust into her hands. Just her name, spoken like it mattered. As the warmth seeped back into her fingers, she realized something profound. Rescue didn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it arrived soaked in rain, holding a paper bag, saying, I am. She had believed that asking for help meant weakness, that endurance was the only currency of survival. But sitting there, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, sipping hot chocolate that tasted too sweet and too kind, she understood that strength could also mean accepting a hand extended without conditions. Hours later, as she lay on a cot in a quiet room down the hall, she stared at the ceiling. Her problems hadn't vanished. Home was still complicated. Conversations would still need to happen. But the crushing certainty that she was alone had cracked. In its place was something fragile and new. Not a promise that everything would be perfect, just the knowledge that someone had heard her whisper and answered. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever sat in your own version of that bus stop believing no one would come, let this be your reminder. Sometimes help doesn't look like you imagined. Sometimes it doesn't arrive from the people you expected. But that doesn't mean it isn't on its way. And if this story touched you, if it reminded you of a night you survived or a stranger who showed up, subscribe to this channel and join a community that believes in showing up for one another. Because you never know who might be whispering in the rain, waiting to hear, I am.